Hi, everyone. Welcome to cctalk. Today, we have an exciting guest, Celina Lee. Her Korean name is Lee Chae-young. She's the author of 꿈을 이뤄드립니다. And she's also the host of Live Your Dream podcast. And she's the founder. And she's also founder of Give One Dream movement. She's a career coach, but also a former investment banker and a corporate attorney. And we'd like to welcome Celina today. Hi, Celina.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So we'd like to talk about your career and what you've experienced so far. And, this is for our wide audience of younger Asian Americans who are, looking to understand their career path. So let me just start with your first question. You started your career as an investment banker and then worked as an attorney or a lawyer, and now work as a career and executive coach. Can you tell me about your career path?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to meet you all virtually and be able to share my story with you. So I started my career as an investment banker. And then I worked as a corporate lawyer at a big law firm. And it's interesting because I actually grew up kind of getting this message. Like, not that my parents actually told me that I have to do this, but there were a lot of pressure, right? So I thought that as long as I work hard and get into good school and get a good job, somehow I would end up being happy and successful, right? So I did, I worked really hard, went to good school and got good jobs. And then I just felt like I did everything right, but my life felt so wrong, right? Why is it that I followed the formula? I did everything that was, I was supposed to do, but I felt like, fulfilled. And so over time, I remember ultimately my goal was to, go to good school and wanted to work at a big law firm in New York City. And I achieved that goal. And, but I just saw my boss, like my partner, and we're still good friends, but I just saw them doing what they were doing for 30 years. And I was like, I don't want to be in my 60s and doing, contract reviews, right? So I think it was that moment where I didn't want to be my boss. And that's when I actually really started to think about, well, then what do I want to do with my life? And it's really ironic because I was done getting all the degrees and jobs, right? But I didn't even know what industry that I was interested in. So I felt like I had to start from scratch. And so I felt like I had followed what everybody told me that I should do to be happy and successful. But maybe I have achieved the society's definition of success, but I didn't know what success meant for me, right? So I went through this very kind of a dark period, and where I was really struggling a lot. On the outside, everything seemed great. I was getting paid a lot of money for my age at the time, right? I went to work in a very fancy office with the secretary. I lived in a nice building in New York City with the doorman, right? But yet I felt very empty. So I remember talking to my dad about this, and he said, I can't do it for you, but I will be supportive of you figuring this out, but you have to do it yourself, right? Only you can get yourself out of this. So for the first time in my life, I gave myself the permission to just do the things that brings me joy, even if it had nothing to do with my job, right? So I think up until that point, I only did things if I thought, is it gonna get me into better school? Is it going to enhance my resume so I can get a better job, right? So I only did things where I thought it was going to somehow give me better career opportunities and things like that. It didn't. I did all of that. It didn't work for me in terms of finding fulfillment, meaning, because I was like, how is it really serving and contributing to people when I'm really making rich people richer, right? Because I was a private equity attorney, and I was pulling all-nighters to review these very long documents. And if I sacrifice my health and life to stay in the office and work really hard, basically I was making very rich people richer. I was like, there's really no meaning in that for me. And now I can see why that was the case, because I'm much more self-aware now. I know myself did before, right? So I'm a natural helper. So I really get a lot of joy from like helping people and serving them. But the environment were just not, like it was just not a good fit for me, right? I didn't know it at the time. And so basically, because I didn't know what I wanted, I just followed the society's formula for success and did what everybody else told me to do, right?
So
Yeah.
let's talk about your path a little bit more specifically.
Yeah.
You grew up in California.
Yep.
And you went to a public school, but you were obviously a good student, and you went to MIT in the East Coast. It's a dream school for many, for most people, and you studied well. And then you also landed a dream job at Merrill Lynch as an investment banking analyst, which is the typical career path for many financial career. And it is basically a dream sort of path. And you were working very diligently, you were getting paid well, a lot of prestige with it. But what made you sort of pivot from continuing that financial career to your next step?
Yeah. So interesting that you asked that, because, what I'm about to share with you kind of will highlight some of like the twists and turns in our career path that we can predict or plan, right? I actually thought about going to law school while I was at MIT, not because it was something a lot of MIT students did. Maybe perhaps they do more of it now, but at the time, it was not a thing for MIT. I actually don't know, when I was there, I don't know a single person who applied to law school when I was at MIT. So, but MIT has these programs where undergraduate students could be paired up with a professor and help with the research. And I was a student, so I don't, I'm sure what I did wasn't that helpful for the professors, but you get to build a relationship with them. You get to learn what goes behind the scene in terms of, how they research and write and all of that. So it was a really good experience for me. And I had a mentor a professor at MIT who actually went to law school, never practiced law, but was taught at MIT for over 40 years. And I actually, wrote about it in my book, which you read. and he was a huge influence to me. And he wrote about the relationship between technology and lawmaking. And that was my first introduction to law. And he always encouraged that, I think you do really well, and why don't you apply? And so I had an idea that I would do that at some point, but I didn't think about that I was going to go into finance. At the time, finance and working on Wall Street was like the hottest thing to do. Everybody wanted a job at an investment bank if they could get one, right? But I thought I was going to go to law school. So I actually wasn't on campus during my second semester of junior year, which is when you should be on campus to recruit for a summer job if you want to work at one of those investment banks. And that, if you get an internship, that turns into a full-time offer and things like that. I wasn't there because I actually went to study abroad to Oxford because I was like, I'm I'm here. I'm at MIT for 8 semesters. Why don't I take 1 semester off and do something completely different? At the time, I don't know how it is now. At the time, MIT did not encourage study abroad, and I had to go through layers of approval to get permission to spend a semester elsewhere, and it was not an easy thing to do. But I loved it. And I just wanted to see, I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. Do something different, go to a different country, make new friends. And I didn't know anybody in the UK. So I basically had to learn to start my life from scratch, right? Make new friends and experience different culture. And it was an amazing experience. any of you are in college or about to enter into college, I highly, highly recommend, obviously after COVID, but, taking like a semester off or a year off and going study abroad or going somewhere different, because you'll never get that. I mean, not you'll never, but chances of you having a full-time job and asking, hey, can I get a sabbatical, come back a year later? A few sort of professions allow that, but many don't. So it would be harder for you, right? So I really love that. So I missed out on all the recruiting, and I wasn't planning on doing any of that. But my grandmother, who raised me, of course, my parents raised me too, but happened in a lot of Asian Korean families, my grandmother took care of me when I was very little, and she was in Korea and she got very sick. So I heard the news that she might pass away soon. So right after Oxford, I actually had planned on traveling around Europe and studying for the LSAT and stuff, but I packed my bags and I immediately canceled all my plans, went to Korea, spent my few weeks with her, which is also remarkable because that was April, right? And Oxford does this quarter system where their quarter ends early. If it was at MIT, I would have never been able to spend last few weeks of her life with her because MIT ends, I think semester ends in May, right? So there's no way. Maybe I would have gone there after she passed, but it would have been really hard. But so another amazing thing, maybe she planned it. I don't know, right?
Very
so I was
yes.
time with her. Then she passed in April, and I had all this time. I was not traveling in Europe. I don't know what else to do. This is also during the IMF crisis. I'm a little older than I look, so. Financially, it was really difficult for my family. So I was I needed to make some money and help out. And, investment banks seems to be what everybody wanted. So I just submitted my resume to different banks in Korea, and Seoul office at the time, which I was already in Korea. So all these different US firms, right, with the Seoul branch office. And luckily I heard back from all of them. They're like, yo, we want to hire you. Maybe because, it was unusual for someone at the time to be bilingual and fluent in Korean and English, right? I'm sure there's many of people like that now, but at the time, this was many years ago when it was really not that common. So I actually started working at Merrill Lynch, and then that turned into a full-time offer. And I considered should I not should I do it or should I not do it? But then I thought, oh, hey, maybe it would be helpful to have some work experience before. And it really was. So I decided to kind of pause on my, on my plan to go to law school. So I did finance first. I always knew that I would eventually go to law school. It's not that I started finance without law school, but it was law school and then finance. Yeah. So that's kind of how it all happened.
I see. So your Merrill experience was not always your first priority, but you got there.
Yeah.
And how was it for you? I mean, it's a dream job for many. And how was your investment banking experience?
It was tough for me in the sense, but workload I could handle because I'm a hardworking person, as many Korean American, Asian American students are, right? But it's just that it was not an environment where someone like me could thrive, because now I can speak about it, but at the time I wouldn't have been able to articulate it to you why it felt so off, right? I think who I was and how, not just Merrill, but finance in general, is investment banking industry in general, is it's all about money, right? So how do we make money? And there's nothing wrong with making money, but for me, I am not a person where my biggest motivator or my biggest goal in life is to make as much money as possible. That it took me some time to really understand that about myself. But that is by far not the most goal. And actually, what's interesting is, now that I've had the privilege of interviewing a lot of people, when you actually do something that you love and you're called to do, which I'll talk about later, you actually make more money, right? So anyway, it's a side topic. We can definitely talk about that later. But and I think because the industry was all about money, and it had that certain level of prestige and all that it attracted the types of people whose values were all about money, or it was like the most important for them. I am not that person. I didn't know it at the time. So it felt very off. Like I just felt like I couldn't be myself. I think I would rather, even if it's like the workload, I mean, yes, I had many all-nighters and it was really tough. But if I was actually pulling an all-nighter to like, I don't know, help somebody in need, and like it was going to really be helpful to them, or, you know, or make a significant difference, I actually would have glad to be staying up, right? But I didn't want to do it again for people who are very rich, right? Like, and they're going to be richer, right? I just felt like there's no meaning in that. Maybe for some people, that's where they thrive and it works for them. But I think this is what I learned. Everyone's different. So you have to really figure out what it is that you want, right? And the only way you're going to be fulfilled in life and career is if what you do is aligned with who you are. And that took me a long time to figure it out. And I definitely, when I was in investment banking, also as a corporate lawyer, what I did was not aligned with who I am. And years later, actually, as you mentioned, I now work as a coach, career coach and executive coach. I had a coach who actually really changed my life. And I really envied her and I wanted to do what she did. But for years, I talked myself out of it because I had this identity as a corporate lawyer. And like, how could I throw away what I've invested? Like, 10 years of, I don't know, I forget exactly how many years of like going to law school and applying to law school, practice as a lawyer. My identity as a lawyer was so strong, yet that I couldn't throw it away. And then I remember my sister was like, but I really wanted to do it. And she was like, didn't you write a whole book about pursuing dreams? Why don't you follow your own advice? So I was like, oh, you're right. So I enrolled in the school, coaching school, by telling myself, I'm not switching career. I'm still gonna, do my law thing. I'm just learning. So that way, maybe I could create a program or curriculum for Give One Dream, my community that I built, which we can talk about later. So that's how I convinced myself. But the first day of school, I felt like I came home. It was like the weirdest feeling. It was like professionally coming home, right? Never felt that way before in any job. I was like, oh my God, I could just be me and do this really well. Never felt that way in my other job. So I guess that's kind of like a long way to answer your question.
Yeah. Well, I think that's wonderful. So your current career is being a career and executive coach.
Yeah.
But you had some middle stops. So first stop was your investment banking career.
Yeah.
And then you went to law school at UC Berkeley. You went back to California, your hometown, and you did fine. And then then you joined a major law firm. And how was that? How was that experience?
So I think I learned a lot. So what's really interesting is because of my investment banking experience, it was very easy for me to get a corporate law job, right? I no longer practice law, but and it wasn't the law that I didn't find fulfilling. I think it's the type of law that I was practicing, which is private equity law, right? It's interesting because at the time, everybody, at my school, like, most people wanted a job at a major law firm because it pays the most amount of money. We have loans to pay, of course, right? And so I felt very lucky and grateful that I got so many offers from so many different law firms. But if I hadn't gotten those offers, I think that there's a chance that maybe it would have pushed me into a different direction, right? Like maybe I would have gone into women's rights law or human rights law, or maybe I wouldn't have made as much money, but I really think that I would have enjoyed it, found it to be very fulfilling, meaningful, and I think I would have stayed, right? So now in hindsight, I can look back on my experience and think that, wow, like what actually seemed to be a really good thing may not have been a good thing, right? And also what you think is a bad thing actually may not have been such a bad thing. You only know it later on, right? So yeah, but at the time, I was young and I thought, well, I should, go and pay off my loans and do this, right? So, but I think because of my finance experience, I was actually much more prepared to choose a firm wisely. Like in terms of, I knew kind of like what things to look for. Like, actually, it's a kind of funny story, but when I was interviewing for investment banks, for whatever reason, people liked me during the interview. And actually, one of the persons said in some bank, don't come here. She said that. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so I did not go there. But so when I was interviewing for law firms, I actually paid attention to, are people, of course I'm being interviewed, but I'm also paying attention, right? Do they feel stressed out? Are they stressed out? Do they have to are they constantly being interrupted and they can't even interview me for 20, 30 minutes? Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me go check this email. Because I knew that I was going to be, that person. And then I would also look at like there are certain policies of the firm and how that creates the culture at the firm. And like, so I was much more prepared in terms of choosing a firm wisely. So I would say overall, like my experience at the law firm was largely positive. I actually, I was talking to my mom about this back then. And I said, if I were to grade my job, give it a rating, I would maybe give it like a B or B plus. And she's like, that's great. For most people, their jobs are failing there, right? Like they would grade it an F, right? So, but then I was like, but what if there's like an A or A plus out there? And if I never try to find it, I may never know if it could exist for me, right? So that's when when the whole exploration happened. But I remember I was actually thinking about what do I really enjoy about this job, right? And I was really honest with myself. I enjoyed like the paycheck. I enjoy the prestige of, saying I'm Celina from Brooks and Gray or Merrill Lynch, right? I like that because I wasn't self-aware enough to know like what it is that I wanted to do, right? So like basically my sense of self-worth was tied to external achievements, which is actually a very, very dangerous place to be because nothing in life will last forever, right? I enjoyed just having that security, right, of working for a large firm, although that's actually false. There's really no job security in any industry. But one of the biggest parts of the job that I actually really enjoyed was I was part of the hiring team, like the recruiting team. As you know, for law firms, their only assets are people, right? Talented lawyers, right? So they spend a lot of money hiring and recruiting law students from, many good law schools, also hiring other lawyers. And I was part of the hiring team. And I would interview a lot of them, right? And also when they get an offer and they're trying to decide which firm to accept. And law firms are actually very competitive about this too. Like now the table has turned, right? And I wasn't even trying to sell the firm because I wasn't sure how long I would stay. But I was just very honest about my experience. I would also want to get to know them and what's important to them and, how they grew up and why they went to law school. I just got to know them. And then I would share my story of how I chose this firm. And this has been my experience. These are the pros and cons. Like you should choose what's right for you. I had 100% acceptance rate. So anybody who would ever talk to me would just come. And I wasn't even trying to sell the firm, right? So I got this like an award for like hiring, and like they gave one medal. I didn't get money. It was like a medal that, as a thank you for making the most contribution to hiring across the whole firm in many different countries. And then I actually remember I was like, I really love that, but that was not my main job. At the end of the day, when that was done, I had to close the door, come back to my office all by myself and review private equity documents. I did not enjoy that. So that's when I learned I can't stay because I'm only enjoying the perks of the job, right? I'm not enjoying the main core of what I do. And this is how I actually evaluate all my opportunities now. Like, do I really like the core of what that job or project entails, right? Again, I also looked at my partner. I respected them and still get friends with them, but I didn't want to be in my 60s and doing the same thing. I'm a very curious person, and there's so many that I want to experience in my life. And so, so that's kind of, what happened.
Very interesting. So you navigated through financial industry, being an attorney, and you finally found your sweet spot in terms of what you like, and you really discovering yourself and your values. And then now how did you feel that conviction about being a career coach and executive coach?
Yeah. So it was for many, many years. And I know I'm talking to a Christian, so I'll share this story. So I have been praying, like, I cannot call myself the most devout Christian. I mean, there's so many people who are incredible in their faith. But one thing that I've done always from when I was very young is I always pray right before I go to bed. It's just a habit that I had for my whole entire life, because my childhood friend, her mom went to church, and when you're little, you just go where your best friend goes, and I just started going to church. And then even during periods when I couldn't go to church, I didn't go to church, I would always pray every night before I go to bed, something that I did always. And then when I was going through these transitions and really period of like trying to figure myself out, it was incredibly tough for me. And I asked, like, dear God, if you see any talent in me or any gift in me, please, let me use it to serve you. And please let me know what it is so I can do something with it, Please let me know what it is. Please let me know what it is. Like, please let me serve you. Please let me know what my gift is if you think that I have any. Because honestly, I didn't really know what I was good at. People are like, oh, you're successful, you're smart, whatever. But I'm like, I'm a hard worker, but I never felt like, there's so many smart people in the world. I had a huge test anxiety all my life. And people really don't know that about me. Like I would get so like stressed out to a point, like it was like I couldn't even take a test, and I would have these neck pains and all that. I mean, this was many years ago. There was even like not even an awareness of like anxiety and maybe that's cured, or like maybe there's something where I could go for help. There was none of that. So I just like had to over prepare for everything because I knew that I would not be able to perform to the best of my ability. There were, people in my MIT class who were super smart and so brilliant. They knew even more than their professors. And it made me feel so small and so insecure, right? I mean, eventually I got very good grades, but it took a very long, steep learning curve because I also went to like a public high school where everybody said I could never get into a good college. I had all the odds against me. And I would look at people who had incredible talents, like maybe they're like really good in sports or in music or something that stood out. I was just always a good student, like just following what people told me to do. So I didn't think that I had any distinct talent at all, right? So it was incredibly frustrating because I was this hardworking person, but it was very debilitating to not know what it is that I wanted to do, right? So that prayer went on like for 10, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years. And then I think it was just like a small calling, like small whispers, right? So I think at that point, it was so basically the way that I became a career and executive coach, it was not like one day, oh my God, let me try this out. It was like, I just started to give myself permission to just try different things. And another thing is, I think the really bad advice about career, people wanting to be helpful to you, give career advice is that like, follow your passion. I think that's an incredibly terrible advice because frankly, like we don't know what that is. Like, and this is when I was really like, trying to figure my life out. I would read books like, what should I do in my life? That was one of the title, as if like the book was going to tell me what I'm supposed to do. Like it didn't, right? And all the books were like, go follow your passion, go follow your passion. But I'm like, if I knew what it was, I would not be reading this book, okay, right? So, it was like very, very like frustrating. So then what I did was I just followed my curiosity, just small little that seemed interesting. It's like a little whisper in it's not like screaming, this is your passion, you should do this for the rest of your life. It's not going to be like that at all for most people. So I had this, I think God told me you should write a book. I remember talking to you about it when it was just an idea, right? And then it was this basically a collection of stories of people, Korean Americans actually, who overcame lots of obstacles and failures to achieve their dreams. So it was an interview book. I also share my story. I got it published in Korea. And then after that, I think God gave me this platform and opportunity to like speak to a lot of people. So I did a lot of speaking engagements. And then that led to me starting my community, which I you know very well because you've attended a lot of my events. So it's called Give on Dream, and it was actually an idea came from my book where my book was stories of 9 people in 9 very different walks of life and industries about how they achieved their dreams and what they've learned. And the last chapter was dedicated to the reader to write their own dreams in it. It was just an invitation for people to think about what they want to do. I've always had a habit of writing down my goals and dreams. I think it's really powerful. And I did not plan this or did not expect it, but so many people started to send me their dreams. So I was like, oh my God, like people all want to do these things. But I knew that like it's really hard to achieve dreams alone. Like nobody does it alone. You need people to help you. So I decided, what if I create this community where we all inspire and empower one another to, help each other and also achieve many dreams together. So I started, different events. I started different campaigns. And then all these amazing things happened with Give One Dream. We can go into that more detail later if you want. But then because I was doing all these random things, I got an opportunity to do this like a fellowship or some leadership program in New York City. And through that, I got paired up with a coach. I've never heard of coaching ever before. And then I was like, what is that? And like, oh, make an appointment with your coach. And it was really powerful. Like the first session, I was like, oh my God, like I've never had in my life where a trained professional, a third, someone who's very objective, right? And who has absolutely no agenda other than wanting you to become the best you can be, who's not a friend or family or mother, right? They all mean well, but they all have their own agendas, right? And who really she was this person who was trained to listen to you and to ask you empowering questions to really get to know yourself better and to really learn like who you want to become and who you are, right? So that like completely changed my life. I was like, I want to do what she does, right? But as I've shared with you before, I talked myself out of it long time. And then when I actually enrolled in a school, by convincing myself I'm not changing my career, I was like, I felt like I came home. And then, oh my God, God has been preparing me for years and years of this. Because honestly, if I didn't go through all of those struggles and obstacles and like really tough times, I would not be in a position to be able to help people. I would not be able to empathize what they're going through, how they feel when they feel stuck, right? So I actually needed to go through all of that to be the coach that I can be now. And I think it was like, I just followed the calling, right? So, yeah.
So you went through, various careers where they had a lot of, prestige, and when everybody would be very, jealous of your success in these jobs. However, you didn't quite have that fulfillment, and you started learning more about yourself, what you really enjoy in terms of helping other people and really guiding other people. And you were fascinated by the career coaching aspect. And then before that, you wrote a book. And
Yeah.
I understand that your Korean education is less than 6 or 7 years.
Right.
And so that's not enough to be fluent in writing some kind of big book, but you were up to that challenge. How did that process of writing the book and talking to various successful Asian Americans for those interviews, how did that help you dig deeper into your current career?
Yeah. So I think it did, I learned so much from that process. I think writing book is one of the hardest things I've ever done, but one of the most meaningful experiences for sure. I think what I was trying to think about was I was this younger person, right? And I don't know what I want to do with my life, but how do other people figure out what they want to do with their life, right? And was the biggest question then, and also the biggest question that I am helping to answer for a lot of my clients now. We don't learn that, right? We don't like you. I'm sure your parents are like, oh, become a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever, right? They like a lot of them choose a profession for them. But I just really wanted to say like, I don't have the answer to that. Nobody told me. I followed the formula. It did not work for me. So I wanted to learn from other people. So that was the goal. And another thing that I also wanted to do was, because I was in finance, worked in finance and law, my world was very small. Like, that's all the people that I knew. Virtually almost all my friends worked in the same industry. So when you're always surrounded by the same people who think like background, you cannot think beyond that, because you can only dream what you can imagine, and you can and actually make that into reality. So my goal was to interview very diverse groups of people from different industries, about like what they've learned and how do they know that's what they want to do with their life. Like, I was just very curious to know that. So um, you know this story, but I got more rejected trying to write this book than I've ever been in my life. My mom was not supportive of it at all. But I learned that when you really believe that you can make something happen, you can make it happen. And of course, writing in Korean was really challenging because I only went to elementary school. I came to the US when I was in 7th grade. So, like, my mom thought I was crazy. She's like, who do you think you are to like write a book? So, yeah.
So in Korean terms, I think they call that 고생을 샀어, meaning like
I know.
you purchased your misery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and,
Totally.
and you took on a big challenge, and
Yeah.
it sounds like your parents weren't very supportive, or they weren't very thrilled with that idea. But how did you overcome that? And family pressure, maybe peer pressure, just societal pressure. How did you overcome those pressure points? And was your faith a factor in making that decision?
Yeah, for sure. So my parents, especially my dad was pretty much very chill, but my mom was very much against it. And she's like, who do you think you are to think that you can write a book in Korean and like get it published? Like, she just like literally flat out laughed at me. She's like, no one's going to read your book. Well, first of all, it's not even going to become a book. No one's going to read your book. No one's going to publish it, like, and she said, like, 책 아무나 쓰는 거 아니다. 네 할 일이나 잘해라, right? So, I mean, I laugh about it now, but I was incredibly hurt then. And I thought, even if everybody laughs at my dream, which it was at the time, like, but you should be supportive because you're my mom. And she said, I really don't think you can do it. Yeah. So, so
Not very subtle.
Not very subtle. No, not at all. But I had a sister, have a very supportive sister, and she was like, you're going to do it. You're going to prove mom wrong, So she was very supportive. So, I say to people, when your mom or your parents like don't support you, or your family don't support you, find someone who will support you, right? It may be family, it may be sister, it may be a friend, it may be, a mentor, or maybe somebody else, right? But find someone who will support you. So I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I also think that how you do, like, if I had told myself, my goal is to write this book, have it read by lots and lots of people and become famous for it, or, become the speaker. All I wanted was, I just wanted to write it and just get it published. And I was actually doing it for myself because I thought, the way that I thought about writing the book was because it was one of my childhood dreams. Like, I've always been a reader. I loved reading books. And when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I would ask Santa Claus to bring me lots of books. And, and I thought, how amazing would it be when I grow up and I have my own book with my name on it? That's it. I just wanted one book with my name on it. And I thought, when I become like an 80-year-old grandma, like, I would look at that book and be proud of my younger self that I did it. It would be a bonus if anybody were to read it. But, I just wanted to do it for myself, right? So I think how you define a goal actually is really important, and why you do it, right? Why is that important to you? I just wanted to see if I could do it. Obviously, the odds were definitely against me. As you said, like, I wanted to write in Korean, and I only went to elementary school. And people are like, why did you write it in Korean? Because it was actually much harder. I interviewed Korean Americans, and many of them didn't speak Korean at all. So I would interview them in English and then translate the book. And it's very hard to it's not some like academic writing or anything like that, right? Like there's stories and feelings and emotions, right? So I have to capture all of that and actually write this very compelling story in Korean, right? And they so there was, it was really, really difficult process. But I grew up being bilingual, right? So I was born in California. I moved to Korea when I was 3, came back to Southern California when I was in 7th grade. And I got bullied a lot. Like, it was really, really tough time for me. Like, cause I looked different. This is way before when Korea was not cool,
Right.
like it was like, are you
No
Chinese
BTS.
or Japanese? No
Right.
BTS, right? Like Chinese or Japanese, I got that all the time. And yeah, it was incredibly difficult times of my life, where I wasn't ashamed, but it wasn't something to be proud about that I am Korean, because it was honestly a source of misery. Like if I wasn't Korean and, and I just spoke English or something, like I would not be bullied, or at least that's what I told myself. Right. So that was really tough. But after, I grew up and back to my, when I was like struggling to figure out what I wanted to do, I had this opportunity to like, host a talk show for a small cable television in Korean American television in New York City. And I like met a lot of, that's when I actually discovered my love of, hearing stories and sharing with people. And then I was so inspired by people like who come from very different backgrounds, but they all had gifts and talents like doing something, and like whatever it was, they were utilizing it to serve people. I was like, what is that for me? Like, I didn't know what I was good at, right? And one day I was like, well, I'm fluent in Korean and English, right? So maybe I could interview successful Korean Americans and bring their stories to the audiences in Korea. And maybe that would be bridging the two cultures and sharing the stories to people who otherwise would not have a chance to hear it. And maybe that's how I would serve, or something like that. I just like made up my own reason, right? So that's why I wrote in Korean. It was much more difficult. My mom was very against it. And she's like, who's going to read it? Who's going to publish it? But eventually long story short, I did prove her wrong. I finished writing it, and it got published by one of the best publishers in the country. And then after that, my life changed. Like, all of a sudden I became this person who was in, being interviewed by the press and media. And I would do a lot of speaking engagements at these big stages. And then my mom would started to brag to her friends. And then I was like, you don't even have any bragging rights, right? But she still bragged. Yeah. And then one day I got very curious, and I was asking her, like, why were you so against it? And for the first time in her life, well, actually in my life, she apologized to me. She's a very loving mom, but she does not apologize to her children, right? She actually,
I think that's very common. I think the law.
I think so.
For Korean families.
I think so, right? But she's like, I'm sorry, I was wrong. She admitted she was wrong, and she said, I really didn't think you could do it, so I was trying to protect you from getting hurt. And so I was like, that's when I actually learned parents actually don't want the best for you. You know why? Because they actually don't know what's best for you, because they actually don't know what you're capable of. You actually don't even know what you're capable of until you try. Like I didn't know if I was a person who was capable of writing a book. I mean, now I do, but at the time I just believed that I could do it, right? But I didn't know it at the time because I didn't have a book. But so this is when I understand, wow, parents actually don't want the best for us because they actually don't know what is best for us. And their role as a parent is to protect their children. Right. And from their own experiences and perspectives, if the road you're about to go down has a high rate of failure, they don't want to see you fail and get hurt and be humiliated in front of lots of people. So they're going to do whatever it takes to stop you. And I also learned that parents are product of their own generation, and their own experiences inform their value systems, and they mean well, but they don't. So I was like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't listen to my mom, because otherwise we would not be having this conversation right now, right?
So let's talk a little bit about that. maybe moment of friction with parents and
Yeah.
about your career choice. I think there were certain professions in Korean American families or typical Asian Americans tend to gravitate toward medicine and law and finance, mostly professionals. And so when you ran into this difference in career path, how did you overcome it? Did you use a very, just strong, I no, I will just do it my way? Or was there a dialogue? How did you sort of overcome that, the difference?
Yeah, and that was not an easy thing, but I actually remember when I was no longer affiliated with those, firms and titles, right? When you go to like a lot of the networking events, especially in New York City, right? And they're like, oh, you meet someone, and they're like, oh, like, what's your name? What do you do, right? Like that question, right?
Those are the
And
typical.
yeah, and before I used to say, "Oh, I'm Celina Lee from Maryland, sure, roasting great." And no more questions asked, right? I'm a lawyer, I'm an investment banker, and like that's the end of that. Like there's no more questions, right? Because people know what that is, right? And I remember when I was no longer affiliated with those titles or firms, I had this moment where I like hesitated, like I didn't know how to introduce myself, and I kind of like felt bad for myself, or like, and then I was like, "Oh my God, am I a person who only feels good about me when I am doing something that other people think is good?" And that I remember was a very shocking moment where it's a very dangerous place to be. So, so I decided that I no longer wanted to be someone like that. And I also told myself, I have done everything. Like I followed what other people said I should do. It did not work for me, right? So I'm not going to let other people's opinion of how I should live my life dictate my path. I wanted to be the captain of my own ship. I know it's cheesy, but this is exactly what I told my sister. I'm going to figure it out myself. And actually, what's really interesting is how you see yourself and how you talk to yourself, and how the stories you tell yourself and the relationship you have with yourself determine all the happiness and success in your life, right? So what I mean by that is how you see yourself as from a positive perspective, you're able to believe that positive story of yours, right? And you're able to relate or communicate the story to other people. So for example, let's say I went to like say I am ashamed of my job now,
Right.
and then I could be saying the same exact thing, but if I'm like not proud of it or somehow I'm ashamed of it, then I'm like, oh, I'm a coach, and just like turn my, like I don't want to talk about it, whatever. Then people wouldn't want to talk to me because it's like they will feel that energy, right? But now, because I actually love what I do, I'm like obsessed with it to a point where like everything that I pay attention to, right? Everything that I read or watch or talk to people about is all how could I really serve and help people to become who they can be and who they want to be. Like I'm obsessed with it, right? So I love what I do, and I think it's really meaningful thing what I do. And like have so many clients who have shared with me like how I helped to transform their lives and change their lives, and thousands of stories like that, right? So how I see myself completely changed. So now when I go to a networking event, because I am really excited and love what I do, I like talk about it with like passion and energy and such an excitement. And people are like, oh my God, what is that? Who is that? What did she do? So then they want to talk to me and actually like want to get to know me and all that, right? So it's not, I feel like it's not what you do, but how you see yourself and how you feel about what you do that actually changes how other people see you. So it's not the job title, it's not who you work for, but it is what is the relationship you have with yourself? How do you tell your story of like a positive story? Like maybe certain things didn't work out for you, but if you believe that, you're on a journey to achieve something better and like you're able to tell yourself a positive story and have that positive relationship with you, that's how you will tell other people with the story. So I came to understand, well, it is really not about what I do, but it is about how I feel about what I do. And I also how I see myself, right? So I think that really was a big shift. And honestly, like if you is another thing that I learned is like, if you allow your sense of self-worth to be dictated by anything other than what comes from within, you're in a very dangerous place because your job can change, you can lose your job, people change, people leave. There's nothing that's permanent in the world, right? So other than, God's love or like how you love yourself and respect yourself, all of that. So I feel like it's a hard work, but something that we all need. And unfortunately, our Korean parents didn't really teach us that. So I had to really learn it the hard way. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think, I think that's what everybody's trying to achieve. Find a career that they love, find true meaning behind it and fulfillment from their everyday work. And that is our ultimate goal. So you went the long path to get there. It took you, quite a bit of time. To our audience out there who are maybe on a journey just starting out, what would you say to them as a mentor?
Yeah. So now that I've been in a position where I've talked to, so many people who have achieved amazing things, for my book and my podcast, I also had the privilege of coaching people, right? So I've actually learned why some people succeed and why some people don't, and that helped me to create my coaching framework called LOVE, right? So it's an acronym, and L stands for learn about yourself. So we need to really get to know ourselves. And the way we do that is through emotions, just paying attention to your emotions every day. And I have these series of questionnaires I have my clients to answer every single day. It's a habit, and so how did you feel today? And what did that tell you about what's important to you? Both positive, negative emotions, because our feelings never lie, right? When you're feeling happy, it's because your core values are being honored. When you're feeling really sad or upset, it's because your core values are being challenged, right? It's going to tell you a lot about how you feel. And what did that tell you about what's important to you? And always overcome internal obstacle. This is huge, right? Because I've seen again and again, people stand in their own way of living the life that they want because fear stops them from taking action. They're so afraid of how other people will think. What if they're so afraid of rejections? I mean, I've gotten more rejections trying to write my book than I've ever been in my whole entire life, at least until that point. And I have actually released a podcast episode just about that story. It is the most popular solo episode. It's called How to Turn No into Yes. So I'd be happy to share the link if you want to share it with the people. So overcome internal obstacles, like, being able to reframe rejections and failures in a way that doesn't, prevent you from trying again. And also, being able to, again, tell a positive story about yourself and who you are, right? So also being able to peacefully coexist with your inner negative voice. And there are tools and techniques in how to do that. We all have those inner negative voices, like makes us feel like we're not good enough or don't have the right background, whatever. We all have that. Even like super incredibly successful people have that. But how much power you give to it is entirely up to you. And there are ways to manage that. And then V is visualize your success. You have to be able to paint a picture of the life that you want. That vision can change, but you, at this moment, what excites you? What do you want to accomplish, experience? It doesn't have to be necessarily to career or some huge achievement, but what do you want? Like, what does that look like? And to be able to visualize and do that every day. And finally, E is explore your curiosities and take action. So it is through the steps of just didn't know if being a coach was what I was called to do, but it was like I just listened to the calling of follow my curiosity of writing the book that led to me starting a community, and then that made me become a speaker. And over all of that experience, I learned there was a theme of all the things that brought me joy, which was people and stories. And when I found that, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I got to do more of it. And if I deny it and go back to becoming a lawyer and review contracts, I deserve to be miserable, right? I'm like not answering the call, right? So I think, yeah. So and it's a process. It's a series. So the more you take action, the more you're going to learn about yourself. So continues the love framework. And I've had clients who have changed careers, built companies from just following the framework, people who found love or got into a relationship, but it's basically something that I've learned over the years about what are the themes of people who actually are happy and successful and fulfilled, and people who don't. And those came out to be the 4 things. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think that's such a rich and very valuable advice for our younger audience out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the key takeaway from today's discussion with you is really get to know yourself, your true self, and what really makes you happy, what excites you, and then how to relate that to your continuous career. Now, obviously, we're not, putting some negative label on finance or being an attorney. Those are also very wonderful, exciting, fulfilling careers. And I think everybody should know that. It just how that ties to you is most important.
Yeah, exactly. You have to find the only way we're going to be living a fulfilling life is if what we do is aligned with who we are. And that is not just in our careers, professional life, but also in our life as well, right? Like, and there has to be a match between what you do and who you are, right? And just one thing that I'll add is I've interviewed so many people, and I found common themes of success, and it came down to 3 things. So it was one, people really they did what they like to do, and it's not like huge passion, but like what do they actually really enjoy, right? And then so if you're drawing a Venn diagram, it's like what you like to do, and then the next thing was like what you actually are good at. Some people are like, oh, but what if those 2 things are different? But chances are, if you actually enjoy something, you're going to invest more time and effort in it. You're going to be better at it. And then the thirdly, last thing, which is the most important thing, is what you find to be meaningful. And I found that to be the most important component of it all, because we all are going to run into obstacles and run into challenges. But if you believe what you do is meaningful, give you the strength to overcome those obstacles, whereas people who are doing it for money or external recognition might quit and try for a bit and quit, right? So those are the 3 things. I've written about it in much more detail, so I'd be happy to share it with you. The link, it's on my website, celinalee.co/steps. But I'd be happy to share that with you. People found that to be really useful exercise when people actually write down those 3 things. And then, this is how I actually evaluate all the opportunities now. Like, people say, oh, can you do this? Or people try to hire me for certain things. I'm like, does this meet the 3 things? I've never found a job that people have offered where it meets all 3. So I just invented my own. So I now, coach and host podcasts. So yeah.
Well, thank you for your really valuable advice. I think there's a lot to really digest here, and it's a very mind-opening session. And hopefully we can have another conversation about specific topics in careers, but also,
Sure.
And we really thank you for your time and joining us all the way from Seoul.
Yes, I know. I'm temporarily here. I'm normally in New York City, but I hope to go back when the COVID situation improves. So.
And thank you so much. So, and wish you wonderful continued success. And we hope to see you on TV broadcasts, and we see you a lot in other YouTube opportunities. And we will add that to this broadcast a little bit later. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. And I know that we've known each other for a long time, and you've seen me really navigate my career path. So thank you so much for all your support. Yeah.
I will gladly testify in your path, because I am a living proof of
I know you were
your
there
various
through
journey.
All of those transitions and moments of struggles and desperations and hardship. You were there through it all, and you've seen me like write the book and do the next thing, and then here we are. So life comes in full circle. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, it was really meaningful to be able to share my story with the audience.